Okay, good morning once more. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to today's session. This is the second one, the second training that we are conducting with regards to CV writing and customization of your LinkedIn profile. And the main reason we are doing this as Africdsa to students and graduates is because most of the job searching or work has gone online nowadays, and it is very difficult for organizations or rare for organizations to do some adverts, perhaps on on newspapers and so on, as we used to have in the past. So, because it is not my day today, we are having our colleagues Regan and Gitu from the Spectacular CVs who are going to take us through this session. We are as well recording the session so that you are able to follow up later. So after the session, perhaps if now you need to engage them individually to create the CV for you, they'll be able to share their contact details. So I like now to take this opportunity to welcome you, Sarah, to take over.
Thank you so much, Xavier. Um, hey, how is everybody doing? I hope right now I'm audible enough. You can kindly confirm from your end whether you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you from my end.
All right, great. So, as Xavier said, today is the second session. We had previously had such a session. And the agenda of this session is to briefly talk about CV writing and LinkedIn profiles. As we all know, nowadays everything has been digitalized. Therefore, even the recruiters, the way they are looking for potential candidates is different from whatever was being done some years back. Therefore, something like LinkedIn has been very popular of late. So, just a brief introduction of who I am. My name is Sarah Gitu, and I consider myself as a job document writer. That is a writer who does CVs, cover letters, professional bios, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. So me and my colleague Regan, we have a company called Spectaculars, and that is where you get to channel all your career needs in terms of documentation that you need, and we get back to you. So after the session, so if you have any need, if you need your CV revamped, you need a cover letter to send to that potential job that you have, you need your LinkedIn revamped, we are going to leave our rate card here. We have a rate card as well as our contact so that you can contact us and let us know what you may require. And that is who I am. And sometimes when you have virtual sessions, it's hard to know who you're talking to. It's hard to interact. It's convenient, but again, it's like take away that physical touch. So just a brief way for those people who have already joined, maybe 5 people can briefly introduce themselves. You tell us your name, your designation, that is what is your profession title. So if in that case you're working, if you're in school, you tell us what you're pursuing, and if you're working, you tell us your career level. That is if maybe you're in the entry level, you're in the middle career level, or you're a senior. Randomly. Anyone who want to go? I can see we are like about 20 of us in the call. Okay, maybe we can do that in the chat box. You can, as we continue the session, you can introduce yourself. It will be great for us to know you better. So moving on, because we have a time, we have some time, we have time to keep. I'll present my slides, and then we're going to discuss in brief what it entails to have a CV that will potentially land you in an interview. Please let me know whether you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see on my end.
Okay, great. So we'll just jump right into it and start discussing about what is a winning CV or a resume. And as I have said, a CV basically does not potentially land you a job immediately. It is a tool that potentially lands you an interview. So when you get to the interview, you are the one to negotiate what is your value proposition for you to get the interview. But for you to get that interview first, you have to have a document, in this case a CV, that sells you in a manner that that recruiter want to call you for that particular interview. So and we'll start. The CV is just a very brief document that entails your career, qualification, and education in a summary form. And a CV should be very brief and to the point, in such a way by the time the recruiter is getting hold of this document, they do not have to go through a lot of details to know who this person is, what value is this person bringing to the table. So it's basically a very precise document. And in that case, there are two popularly known types of CV, and number one is a modern CV, and the other one is an ATS CV. And you would ask me, what is the difference between the two CVs? One, a modern CV is a visually attractive CV that is made using, colors, infographics, icons, and they are used because this is a CV that is tailored for a human eye. This is a CV that somebody is supposed to look at. You're sending to a particular person to have a look at it. That's why it's attractive. And it is best to use this CV when you're particularly sending this CV to a person. This CV is not going to land in in a machine is not going to be scanned by a machine, it's going to land on someone's hand. So in this case, you're sending to an email. In this case, for example, somebody asked you, can I have a look at your CV to know whether you meet our needs? In this case, it's best to send them a modern CV. That's why it's visually attractive, because the consumer is a human. And the next type of a CV is an ATS. An ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System. This is basically a system that usually sift through CVs. And this CV, it's very simple. It doesn't have icons, doesn't have colors, doesn't have infographics. It utilizes a very simple layout. It's elaborate, and in this case, because it doesn't have such things, it doesn't have such things because the system cannot, the ATS system cannot scan through things like icons, tables, photos, text box. It can't. Therefore, this CV, it's very simple. You just use like a word document to come up with a CV. But that doesn't mean that CV does not communicate value. Still does. Only thing is, it's not as attractive as the modern CV. It is best to use this CV when you're sending your CV to multinationals, a large organizations such as the UN, because such organizations do not have the HR capacity that can scan a CV one by one. So they utilize a system that can, the initial stage, that system sift through CV, and those CVs that pass through that system are the ones that are going to be looked at by now the HR. So whenever you're sending CVs to large organizations, multinationals, or you have come across as an advert, and this advert has a link, and this link, is telling you whenever you press that link, you're supposed to upload your documents. You automatically know that this is CV goes to a system first. So it's good to use the ATS CV whenever you're sending such applications. At the end of the session, I'm going to show you what I mean, because I know some of you are wondering, okay, so we have a modern CV and an ATS CV. How do they look like? What is the difference? At the end of the session, I'm going to show you a sample, and we do both. So if you have such needs, if you know, I know a certain human resource manager and they're looking for my CV, so automatically you're like, maybe it's best for me to use a modern CV. We offer such services, so you can get yourself the modern CV. So at the end of the session, I'm going to show you a layout of how a modern CV look like, and also a layout of how an ATS CV look like. But in this session, we're going to discuss the ATS, the formatting, the content, what goes into making a winning CV or a captivating CV. What are the content that goes into such a CV? Those content are intertwined because they are the same with the modern. But you see, the modern, sometimes modern has more information, because for example, you have publications, for example, you have done research projects before and you have links to such projects. Modern CV have sections that allow you to input such details in a way that, it's like you're designing, like the way you're coming up with a design and of a poster and such things. So it has sections that allows you to input such details. So moving on, the first section of a functional CV is the name. Like the first thing up there is the name, contact details, and the header. So in this section, you use things such as your full name, your working email, the correct phone number. You indicate them here. And one thing in this section, you realize that nowadays, you see the way things are changing with technology. with so many things changing, you realize that you do not include addresses nowadays. You just include your city and your location. Even sometimes it's not a must. You need to be as brief as possible. Remember what I said earlier, a functional CV should be very brief. You should not be indicating a lot of details. So in this case, what you need here is your name. How can this recruiter reach you? In this case, your email address and your functional phone number, so that in case they decide to call you for an interview, they know the number that you're going to contact you through. So simple details. And also another thing that I find so many people having in this section, because it's the first section, you find somebody having so much details. They have indicated their name, their location, their religion, their gender, their marital status, their age, so many details, so many personal details. And one thing I'd want to tell you, it's not necessary. In fact, if you have such details such as gender, age, marital status, it's not necessary. It's high time you remove them from your CV, because such details, they can form part of discrimination. They form basis of discrimination when in the recruitment process. Let's say, for example, in this case, this recruiter wants a person between the age of 30 to 40, and you have gone there, indicated you're 25. It forms a bias. So such details, they're not necessary in this section. You only need your name and how the recruiter can reach you. That's it. The other thing that goes into this section is it's a title. And in this case, I mean your job title. So what do I mean by this? For example, you're applying for a role that is looking for a data scientist. You want to include your job title as data scientist for you to increase your chances for this 8 years of the recruiter who is looking at the CV to see that you match with the requirements that they are looking for. So it's always a good practice that you include a job title. So many CVs do not have a job title, and then I understand because some of us most of the time send generic CV. So the CV that you made, I think 3 years ago is the same CV you used to send to all the applications that you make. So if that CV said you're a receptionist at that time, and at this point you have transitioned and you have gained so many other skills that do not relate to receptionist, that CV is still intact. You have not updated it, you do not tailor make it, so you just send it. But it's a very good practice if you want to increase your chances to land an interview. Every time you send in your CV, this CV matches whatever this recruiter is looking for. So if this job description is looking, for example, for a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, you want to change your job title to match that particular job title that is in the job description. So it's a recommended practice to include a title that matches the job description. So, and another thing that goes into this section, so remember we've talked about your information, that is your name, contact, and email. Below it, you have your job title, and in this case, you said the job title should be matching with your job description. And then right below that, you have below the header, it's a recommended practice that you list crucial core competencies in relation to the industry or the job description. By core competencies, what do I mean? There are two major types of core competencies, and in this case, we have hard skills and we have soft skills. Hard skills are basically the technical skills that you learn on the way. These are skills that somebody has to teach you. These are the skills that you go to school to learn. For example, data entry, that is something you have to learn. It's a skill that you acquire. But on the other hand, skills like soft skills are skills that are inborn. They are skills that help you perform the hard skills. For example, you have to have good communication skills uh, for you to deliver in any role in an organization. You have to have good interpersonal skills. You have to have teamwork skills for you to be able to be part of a team and deliver on a common goal. So those are the skills I'm talking about. So below the header, or otherwise the job description, you list some of the crucial core competencies, and in this case, most preferably the hard skills in relation to the industry, because we have different industry. We have the accounting, we have people in the data, we have people in the medicine industry. Depending on the industry and depending on the job description, you list the core competencies that you have acquired or those that the recruiter is looking for just below the header. Up to there, are we together? Are we having any questions? I would want this session to be as interactive as it can. So you can engage me. Okay, good. We don't have any questions, so we can proceed. So the next section is a summary. So a summary, remember the previous section is like one section in one. When I show you a sample, you're going to get a picture of what I'm saying. So the second section is a summary. And this summary is what people popularly term it as professional profile. Yes. So this professional summary, it's a brief introduction of who you are to the recruiter and includes such things as what is your job title. And I remember when I was starting the session, I asked you guys to tell me what is your title. I hope you're still indicating that in the comment section so that we can get to understand our audience better. So it includes such things as what is your job title, how many number of years of work experience do you have, what are some of the core skills you have, in this case, the hard skills and the soft skills, what are some of the achievements, so in this case, what makes you stand out from the crowd, as well as one thing that you're passionate about, and in this case, something that relates to this job. So, a summary in a nutshell is something that communicates your value proposition in a brief way. It's something that it's a paragraph, you write it as a paragraph that is basically 4 to 5 lines, very brief. And a good summary should catch the attention of your reader, in this case, the recruiter, captivate them to continue reading the rest of your CV. So in this case, a CV, summary is very brief, number one. Number two, it should be very captivating. This person, by the time they're reading this summary, they should have an idea of who you are and what value you bring. And in also, do you match the needs of their requirement? Whatever they are looking for in a candidate, do you match that? Your summary should be able to communicate that. And also, this takes me to the other point I've discussed. You should not be sending generic CVs. That a CV that you wrote today is a CV that you send to recruiter 5 years to come. Every time you're sending a CV, and most times you have analyzed that job and you feel like you meet most of the requirement, you should tailor make your CV in such a way it meets the needs of that particular job description. Because that way you're going to increase your chances of landing your CV. And Anybody here can attest to me that nowadays competition is very high in the job market. It's very hard to land an interview. It's very hard to get into a job. You need to stand out. You need to, be very polished, to polish your document, to polish your skills, for you to get to a particular role. So in this case, though, polishing your document means every time you send in your documents for applying for a role, you need to tailor make them in such a way they reflect the needs of that particular recruiter. Moving on to the other section, which is the third section. This section is this talk about the strengths and the career highlights. So this can be two in one. So in this case, you talk about your strength, and the other part you talk about your career highlights. And what do I mean by this? So the strengths in this section, you identify at most five competencies that speak out who you are and most importantly resonates with the JD. So in this case, I mean, by the 5 competencies, I mean those core competencies I talked about. So you have clearly identified what is your core competencies in terms of hard skills and soft skills. So, and then you go again and self-evaluate yourself and ask yourself, what are, out of all these skills I have, what are the most skills that resonates with who I am, and what are some of those skills that speaks out and resonates with this particular job that I'm applying for. So those are the strengths that you're going to indicate in your strength sections, because in this case it's like they're speaking in life in who you are, what can you do, what is your value, what you do so well that to you it's so natural that comes when somebody else sees, they're like, you are good at communication, you are good at analytical skills, you are good at this. So those are the things that you indicate as part of your strengths. And here, you do not just list them, you elaborate them. For example, if you tell somebody you're very good at, you're detail oriented, you need to tell them, how did you achieve this and how does it help you in this particular job? So in this case, you want to tell them that you're good at spotting, for example, incorrect and information, as well identifying different facts that relate to each other, that's producing useful results and saving business time and money. So in this case, you're telling them, I'm very good at this particular skill, I use it like this, and this is how it's going to benefit you. At the end of the day, it's a strength to you, but it's a win-win situation. It's helping you perform your job better and also helping your employer in a certain way. So that is the section of the strength part. And in this case, most times I always advise, you remember that section, the first section here, we talked about the header. The section we are talking about listing the crucial core competencies in relation to your job, industry, and job description. So I always advise that section you can list your hard skills, and in the strengths section you list your soft skill, because in any job that you acquire, the two have to marry. You have to have hard skills and you have to have soft skills. You can be very good at analyzing data, but if you don't know how to communicate how this data is affecting this company, then that information is not useful. You can be very good, you can be a very good, for example, nurse, but if you do not have teamwork skills, it will be very difficult for you to bring value in that particular hospital. So those skills marry into each other. They have to go hand in hand. So this section, I always advise that you identify what are some of the soft skills that you have that help you in delivering the hard skills that you have. And below this section, you can also highlight your career highlights, and in this case I mean the achievements. And achievements are the things that you've done before that stood out. There were things that were spectacular, there were things that you did that, saved money, saved time, changed the processes to make them efficient and easier, things that made generally work easier. So, and one rule of writing, just like any other writing, you have very different types of writing. You have academic writing, we have, so many rules of writing. So just like any other rule of writing, CV writing rule number 1 says that it's very crucial to quantify the achievement so that you stand out from the stiff competition, as well as earn points in the ATS software. One of the things about the ATS, you remember me talking about a type of a CV that is the ATS. So one of the rule of the ATS, which is a system, it earns you a point every time it's able to identify a metric. It's able to identify some numbers. So in this case, the achievement section, it checks to see whether you've able to quantify whatever you're terming as an achievement. So if you're saying that you're very good at analyzing data, how did that help this particular organization? And in this case, can you quantify that particular achievement? So also quantifying the achievement portrays you as person who has value, and it also shows that you're just not a doer, because your work is not following. You just don't follow whatever you're told by your senior, but you create impact in whatever you're doing. So and I know sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes somebody comes to me and they're like, Sarah, I want you to do my CV. And I'm like, okay, so I have a set of questions that I want you to answer me so that I'm able to capture your profile correctly. So one of the questions I ask you is, what are some of your achievements? And somebody, they cannot remember, number 1, and number 2, it's very hard for them to quantify. So it's always good, whatever you do in your career, you can document. Sometimes life happens and you forget whatever happened and you move on, and 2 years later, 3 years later, you want to upskills, you want to move from one career to another, you want to go to another company, and now you need this document, but you don't know what you did in your previous employment. It's always a good habit, document them. And number 2, you can use certain set of questions. For example, I have certain set of questions that will be thought-provoking for you to be able to, quantify your achievement. Number 1, for example, will be, how did you reorganize something to make it work better? Have you identified any problem in your organization and solved it? How did you do that? How have you come up with any new idea that improved things in your organization? In this case, it made things more efficient. Have you developed or implemented new procedures or systems? Have you increased revenue, sales, saved money, time for your organization? And you see, such questions, they make you start thinking, oh, okay, I was doing ABCDZ. It was part of my job description, but I actually made this happen. So in that case, you're able to quantify and not just list them as duties that you did, but as an achievement that stood out from the normal duties that you perform day to day. So that is the other section. And before I move on, I want to know whether anyone has a question. Anyone has a question? I can see someone is saying I put full presentation. Can you guys be able to see my presentation? Another person has said a sample would be nice for relatability. Okay, I'll share the sample at the end of the session. Okay, so you don't have any question. Let me move on. So the next section of the CV is the work experience. So this is the most crucial part of a CV as it informs the hiring manager of what you have done before. And just like any other rule of writing, it is arranged chronologically. That is, you start with the most recent employment engagement to the one that you've performed later. So the most recent employment should be the one appearing at the top. It entails details such as the name of the company, the date period, and finally the key deliverables in each role. You would assume these are very simple things. It's like ABCDZ. It's automatic. You have to indicate the name of the company, the date period, and such things. But the thing is, I see so many people making this mistake. You would identify what is a role, what is a company, but you don't indicate the date period. Or you indicate the date period and you just mention what was the year, you leave out the month. So, for example, you worked in this company in June 2020. So you just go straight and say, for example, a doctor, Kenyatta Hospital 2020. Then you leave out the month, June, that is. One thing about ATS, ATS just looks for minor mistake to eliminate people from the crowd. If you do not indicate such minor details, it goes minusing your points. They are simple things, but it goes minusing your points. At the end of the day, your CV does not go through the system, and your CV will never even see the light, the light into the hand of the HR. So such details are very crucial. They are minor things but they are very crucial. So another thing is the key deliverables. So in this case, what I mean are what are the things you do in day-to-day activity of this particular job. So it could be you managing correspondences, whatever you do in that particular role. So when you're listing these deliverables or these day-to-day activities, it's advisable to use action verbs. You remember our high school teacher teaching us about action verbs to show impact. So for example, you use action verbs like delivered, managed, led, promoted, etc. So another thing I see a lot of people doing here is you take your job description. You see the way the job description came, and you copy paste that job description to your CV. That is usually a mistake because you see the job description, it is what you perform, but it doesn't follow this particular rule of writing. So for example, sometimes you find the job description will be to manage correspondences, to answer to clients' email, and then you copy paste the way it is to your CV. This will automatically deny you marks or points when it's passed through the ATS system. So it's advisable you use the action verbs to show impact. Then the other section is the education, certification, and professional membership. In this section, you include the education background from the most recent. Again, it's the same as the work experience. You start with what is the most recent to the latter. So if you have changed career, if you have to change the career, some of the certification can be dropped. So for example, you have indicated all certification you've done before, but in this case you want to recareer, you want to switch from one career to another. In this case, if this certification does not relate to that sector you want to transition to, you can drop those certification. You can only retain them if whatever you studied help you or have some transferable skills that you can use them to that other career path that you want to transition into. So also in this section, you do not include whatever you scored in terms of marks. Leave that alone. You do not include that you scored a second upper, a second lower, first class. No, you leave that detail out. Such details only the recruiter will know after they call you for an interview, because after the interview, if this person is proceeding with you, they're going to ask you for more details. And in this case, they're going to ask you for your academic certification. But because you do not want this person to form a bias, to discriminate you and not call you for an interview in the initial stage, you do not include such details in your CV. If the interview is to proceed, this particular recruiter is going to have those details anyway, because they are going to ask for them. So also, if you have accrued any certification, any training that you've done online, nowadays people do a lot of online certification. You be sure to include them because they are very crucial. Don't say that because it was maybe a 1 month training you did via Udemy or Coursera or whatever other platform that you're not going to include them. You did them for a reason. So be sure to include them in this particular section. And if you're a member of a professional body, for example, ISPAC, I know they are a body for engineers, for lawyers, be sure to include if you're a member of such, because such things communicate value, communicate that you have taken deliberate efforts into bettering your skills. So be sure to include such details in this section. The other section, which is the last section, and I love this section because sometimes when clients come to me, they tell me I have a career gap. They tell me I do not have relevant experience to this job. This is a section that you can utilize and it can work wonders. So this is a volunteering experience. So this section, it's very vital, because sometimes if you lack experience that the employer is seeking for, but you have volunteered somewhere else, you can use this section as your experience section. And in this case, be sure to outline the role you held in that when you volunteered, and what are some of the key contribution you made while at it. So it's usually a very good section, because sometimes it can cover up your career gap. You can say, you left your work maybe 2 years ago, but between 2 years ago and now, you have done some volunteer work. So that will cover your career gap. Number two, there are people who are in the entry level. You just fresh from school, you have no relevant experience that the employer is looking for, but you've done some volunteer work. It also communicates that you're a proactive person. And that's all for a CV. So this basically forms like the key sections of a CV, and it is intertwined with what goes to the 8 years and what goes to the modern CV. The only thing that is different maybe is just the layout of the two CVs. So not unless there is any question, I would swiftly proceed to the strategy section. Any question for me? All right, let's move on. I think in the strategy I have discussed most things while we were looking at the sections of the CV. Because the first thing is a good CV should land you into an interview. I've already said that. A CV does not necessarily get you the job. It opens door to an interview. Number two, each time you apply for a job, be sure to read the JD, that is the job description first, and the requirements. Tailor the CV to match the skills outlined in the job description. I have emphasized this a lot. It's a very common practice that people use a generic CV. And sometimes I think it's the time and the effort that is put into coming up with a CV that makes somebody be like, let me just share this CV that I have. The deadline is approaching, then let me just share whatever I have to the recruiter. And you go ahead and share the generic CV that you have had for God know how long. But, with good news is people like us, you don't have to hustle. You just have to come to us, tell us what is your requirement, share with us the job description, your current CV, what you're looking for, and you're going to work the magic. You don't have to hustle. So the other thing is, every time, never send a generic CV. Read, understand, and put extra effort in editing your CV. So I have talked about that. The other thing is the CV presentation. How should the CV look like? This document it's potentially talk about you in your absentia. It speaks about you in your absentia. The recruiter look at that CV and try to imagine this particular candidate. So how should this CV represent you? Number one, a CV should be virtually attractive. It's an image representation of who you are professionally. It should be a maximum of 2 pages unless you have very vital information that we can't omit. And in that case, a maximum of 8 years. You see, an 8 years usually use the Word document. So if you're using Word, it is one column document. So in that case, you can have 3 pages maximum. A CV should be very, very precise. Nowadays, people are very busy, and it's highly unlikely that somebody will receive a CV of 5 pages and will go through that document. It's very highly unlikely. So should also use standard fonts, for example, Gilson, New Times Roman, very standard formats. Then unless it's a modern CV that I talked about earlier, avoid using shouting colors such as red, pink, purple. Utilize neutral colors that are very common, like blue. Use the standard margin. You see, these are very, what do they say? Very simple things, but yet you receive CVs that have these mistakes, and you wonder, they are just very minor mistakes, but people still make them. And that is the first. If this is the first document that somebody is supposed to judge you on before they see you, you can imagine what picture they'll have if they see such minor mistake and they have not already met you. They already form a bias in their head of who you are. It couldn't be the case on the ground. You could be very, a skillful person, a resourceful person, a person who have developed their career, but your CV is communicating otherwise. The other thing is avoid leaving blank spaces and ensure the CV flow from one section to another. Break up text using bullet points and headers to aid the flow of information and make it less tedious to read. So the other thing is the do's. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? I think by the time I'm mentioning this, point I'll be mentioning it for the, I don't know, the millionth time, but tailor your CV for every role you're applying for. Do not send a generic one. Use metrics. Remember what I said about the ATS? It scans for metrics. So whenever you're listing your achievement, be sure to quantify them. Use present continuous tense action verbs for the current roles and the past tense form of the verb for the past role. What do I mean by that? If this is the current role you're having, and remember you said you're using action verbs, you'll be using the present continuous tense action verb. So you'll be like delivering ABCDZ, managing a team of 5 people, coordinating whatever you're coordinating. So if it's the past role, you'll be coordinated, managed a team of 5 people. That is what I mean by this point. So some of the don'ts that you're supposed not to include in your CV is, again, number one, I talked about it. Do not include details such as marital status, age, gender, date of birth, because they form a basis of discrimination. Do not have a CV that is more than 2 pages. It's one of the things that bothers recruiters, by the way. By the time they receive a very huge document, they do not have the time to go through it. If you have an ATS CV, remember it's written using the Word. Whenever you're sending it, please be sure to convert it to PDF. Do not send the Word. And that is because by the time you're sending it, Word have these tendencies of distorting formatting. So by the time the receiver is getting your document, the formatting is distorted. And it's not even appealing to look in the eye. Also, for your security, you don't want somebody to edit your document. So always convert it to PDF. And the last part, it's the most interesting. It has been an arguable point in the industry currently. It's do not include a list of referees in the CV unless most of the time it is a government-related job. You see, initially we had that CV that you had to include the referees, and whenever you're sending your CV, it has to go with your referees. But it's a current trend nowadays. Whenever you're sending your CV, that CV does not include the referees. And there's some of the reasons behind this. Number one is the data protection privacy. Nowadays, whenever you're looking for a job, you find yourself sending your CV to so many people. So you don't even know where this CV is landing to. You don't know the hand in that this CV is going to be received in. So the details of your referee, you want to protect the privacy of your referees. Because in this case, you have included the phone number, you have included the email address, whatever information you've included about your referees. You don't know who is going to receive this CV after you send to the recruiter. This information can be used in all manner. So you want to protect the privacy of your referees. You don't want your referees to be called by the teller people asking for their loans and stuff things. They'll be so mad for such things. The second thing will be, we all have this tendency, especially if you wrote your CV so many years ago or some time back, and now you have not updated it. And you have a list of your referee. Maybe it's even your referee is your, college, what were they called? College supervisor. This person was supervising like 100 people. They have supervised a whole lot of other people after you left. They can barely even remember you. And this person, remember, is supposed to speak highly of you when a recruiter contacts them. So this person is called and is asked, do you know so and so? What can you say about them? What is their character? What are some of their special skills? How do they handle pressure? And this person does not even remember your name. So you want to have your list of referee separate, that you, number one, constantly update. Number 2, keep them on tab. And number 3, that you protected their privacy. That is the reason why it's a current trend that you do not include openly the list of your referee in your current document. And that wraps up my presentation. Not unless I have any question from you guys, I'll proceed and share sample.
I have a question, Sarah.
Yeah.
So this is with regards to the referees, and you have mentioned something that you find someone, you indicate perhaps the names of the referees who used to be your college, university, or even high school tutors and so on.
Yes.
And when it comes to referees, is it a must that I use someone who has ever worked with me, or I can use any person who is close to me and is able to give a recommendation in case they have been asked? And this person specifically must be a professional. Yeah, like, is it a professional? Yes, they haven't worked with me, but we have
Mm-hmm.
a close relationship.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that question. In regards to that, it's always advisable to use a referee who is a person you have interacted with previously at a professional level. And this is because this recruiter is not looking to seek to know who is Savior in a nutshell as a person. This recruiter is seeking to look at who is Savior in terms of work. How can how if I'm to recruit Savior, what do I expect? Because you see, in certain scenarios you can have, even for example, your sister as a referee because this person knows you, but this person has not interacted with you work wise. They do not know what are some of the skills you have in terms of work. They cannot testify and say Xavier is a team worker, Xavier is very good at ABCDZ. So it's always advisable the referee that you're putting out there is somebody you have interacted with professional wise.
Okay, thank you. I think that is well explained.
Sorry?
That is well answered. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other question? Yes, Mohammed.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, your question was about still on the riveries.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find some of the advertisement that they ask you specifically to add the river, your current riveries. So at that point, is it must you have to add?
Okay. Um so we have let me make it so clear. We have two scenarios. We have a job that it's an open-ended job. So in this case, this job asks for certain specifications. So you'll find they have highlighted the skills, the qualification, the education level, and the deadline. And then they go ahead and also indicate the documents that are required for you to send. And then that job advert does not go ahead and say include a certain number of referees. It's open-ended. In such cases, do not send a CV that has referees in it. You're supposed to send a CV that is full, communicative, indicating your value and all that, but omitting the referees. Whenever you proceed to the interview part, this recruiter is going to do their background check. It's part of the interview. And whenever they get to that background check step, they are going to ask you for the list of referees, because basically what they do, they just contact these people and ask um these people, who is so and so, what can you say so and so. Even in such in some instances, they usually have a set of questions. They don't even contact the recruiter via phone call. They send them an email. With a set of questions targeted to ask and understand who you are in terms of your professional life, on how they have interacted with you before. So in such a scenario, just send your CV without a referee. But there another scenario where this job advert says send ABCDZ, including a list of 2 referees. In such a case, you are supposed to include back your referees to your CV. In most cases, government jobs, they usually you ask for a list of referees. So in such a case, you can include your referees.
Okay. I don't know if I can ask a question or Mohammed is satisfied with the response.
Yeah, I'm satisfied. It's okay. You can continue.
Okay. I'm picking up from Mohammed's question. Um, you see, in a situation whereby you mentioned that this specific recruiter wants you to include the referees, and
Mm-hmm.
as you had mentioned that the issue is the emerging issues on data privacy and so on. But if perhaps you are my referee and I have already contacted you that I'm applying for this job, and they are requesting that there must be some kind of referees in the CV that I'm submitting, and you have given me consent to submit, is that an issue or that now becomes okay?
No, thank you, Sylvia, for your question. So if you contacted your particular referee and they've given you consent, that is not an issue. You can go ahead. No, in this case, you look at this scenario from 2 dimensions, because remember there is the issue of data protection. There's also an issue of this person being contacted and speaking highly of you. So this person, quote unquote, knows you, have been in touch with you. You've kept touch with this person. So even if this person have given you consent, you would also want to look at, am I protecting personal information of this particular person? Again, as I have mentioned, it's a very arguable and an emerging issue that has been currently in the industry, that we have observed. Another thing that I would also want to point out as to why the referee list is currently being sent as a separate document from the CV you're submitting to the application is also the fact that we said that a CV is a very precise document. So if you have an option of sending a referee, because referee in this case is supposed to be used as your background check. If you have an option of sending it as a separate document, why would you not utilize the available space to communicate other important section of your CV, for example, your achievements?
Okay, that's okay, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Any other question? I think I'll go ahead. If you have any more question, because I want my colleague to take over for the LinkedIn part, you can contact us. We're going to leave our red card with the contact here. So if you have any questions or you require such services, we'll be sure to provide them. So in this case, I will go ahead and share a sample. Let me know whether you can see my screen. And Xavier, you can confirm to me, is it full screen?
Yes, I can see it on my end, but you can you can at least zoom to 100.
I increase. Oh, okay.
That's better. That's okay.
All right. So, from my screen, whatever I have presented is a modern CV. From one of my clients, I have borrowed consent. It's where I am preaching wine and taking water. But that's how basically a modern CV looks like. It has all the sections. So this is what I was talking about, the job title. You can see this person has only indicated their phone number, email, and location. There's the summary, there's the experience section. There's the industry expertise. These are the core competencies. And you see what I said, it's visually attractive. It uses icons. It uses infographics. It's something when you send to somebody, they'll be attracted. It has color. There's the education part. There's the training and certification. There's the strengths part. You see, these are icons that are utilized here, Also, you can also include a section like project. In this CV, you can be as creative as you can. You can even communicate, your personal side. You can even have a section that says how you spend your time. What is your favorite books to read? What are some of your hobbies? It can be as creative as you can. That is the modern CV. And on the other hand, whatever I'm sharing, I don't know whether you can see from your end, it's an ATS CV. So this is a PDF version, but you can see all the section we've talked about, job title, the core competencies. In this case, this person even included what are the software and tools that they are good at, very basic personal information, not too much sharing, professional profile stroke summary, their professional strength, experience, special project they've handled before, education, training and certification, other courses, workshop and conferences, and that is the end of the CV. You see, in the two CVs, we don't have the list of referees. And this is a CV that is 2 pages, and yet this person has 9 years of experience. Everything that is crucial has been captured within 2 pages, precise and to the point, just communicating value. I hope that put into perspective what I have been talking about all this time. Any question before I leave?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, Xavier.
Yeah, so for instance, for our students and special graduates who complete trainings, the certification comes from a professional body called IABAC, that's the International Association for Business Analytics Certification.
Mm-hmm.
There's normally a number that they are given, the professional number. Is it necessary to put even the number or just the name? Then during the due diligence, where now they are told to produce those certificates for verification and so on, is when they can provide.
When you are indicating it in the CV, the number part is not necessary. The recruiter themselves will do their own due diligence to confirm indeed you're a member to that body. But when you're indicating your CV, when you're writing your CV, indicating that particular number is not per se necessary.
Okay, I think that is fine.
Yeah. Any other question? All right. Thank you so much for your time. I'll let my colleague to take over and take you guys through LinkedIn, which is also a very popular platform for recruiters to look for talent. Welcome, Regan.